What's up, Jimmy?
How
Uh,
are you, man?
Good, man. Finally happy to have you on my podcast, man. It's been long awaited, man. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Good, man. Oh man, those are the coolest posters, dude. Where'd you
Thank
get
you.
that?
Yeah.
That one's my favorite Nosferatu. I love
Yeah.
that. Oh my gosh. Have you seen the new one yet?
Yeah. Oh, dude, I watched it like 4 times.
Oh yeah. See, I love it too, dude.
Yeah.
And he's been doing so good. Um, what's his name? Eckers. Uh,
Yeah. Is it Bob Eckers?
what's his name? Oh, I swear I draw
Robert
a blank.
Eckers?
Yeah, dude, he's been killing it so much with movies lately. It's been like since The Witch and everything up into now he wants to work on like a gothic version of A Christmas Carol.
Oh, sweet. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
that would be cool. And he's got William Dafoe, I think, as um Ebenezer Scrooge. He wants
Oh,
to make it
nice.
darker. Yeah, dude, it's gonna be awesome. So I'm excited to see how that goes.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing.
So your latest song, "Break My Heart," right? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So it's more of a, but before the Dead Electrics, the band I was in was like sorry, my camera keeps like moving around.
Okay, it's okay.
Uh, it was more like I call it like proto-punk, like very inspired by
Yeah,
like Iggy and the Stooges, and
yeah,
it was in the like 2010s kind of era of music, so it was a little more indie sounding. So
sure.
I think Break My Heart just kind of went back to that
Cool.
and kind of pulling from some of those influences, but still like with the newer stuff that
Hmm.
I've been working on, that's a
Yeah,
little darker and a little bit more of the like dark wave kind of industrial, where I really just decided to just turn it up on it.
that's awesome.
Yeah, because before even like before I started the Dead Electrics, I kind of experimented with that sound,
Hmm.
but I never really like dug into it.
Right.
And I just said, let's just crank it and
Yeah,
just dive in, just do it.
absolutely. Who are some of your
Yeah.
influences on this one, since you're going for more of an industrial sound?
I listen to a lot of ministry.
Okay.
Like I've been into ministry forever, like
Of
everybody. Yeah.
course, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of ministry, and I actually, pull from a lot of like non-industrial, so
Okay.
like Depeche Mode,
Cool.
bands like that. And I listen to a lot of music in Spanish, so like even like this producer Tiny, he does stuff
Yeah,
with like yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Tiny.
Hmm.
And just the sounds he makes, I love like all the drum sounds and everything. So I
Yeah.
like to pull from there and create kind of my own
That's
vibe.
awesome. That's really cool. So you've been putting out a lot of singles. I think what Patience was your kind of first sort of EP where you're like, this is me, this is my new beginning or whatever does that seem about right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me about, are you gonna kind of bring these in together for an album, or are you just kind of going, here's a single, here's a remix with the single, like that kind of thing? Is that kind of where you're going right now?
Yeah, so I have about like two more singles. One's already ready,
Yeah.
and another one I'm just finishing up the vocals. But my plan is just set up a few more singles and then put them all into an EP with some unreleased songs, and then do another EP.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the plan right now. It's still kind of up in the air. I'm still kind of figuring out what I want to do, but um, that's I putting out like either a full length or more of an EP is definitely the goal, because the singles was just kind of to get things moving
Of
and
course, of
kind of
course.
get that traction.
Yeah, I understand that marketing scheme where it's like you gotta kind of get people in, and
Yeah, for sure.
we're at a weird time where where you kind of got to catch people quickly, especially. I mean, and that's kind of how I got to hear you was through, I think it was like one of the goth videos or post punk videos
Oh yeah.
page on Instagram. It was one of those
Nice.
where, they were promoting your music and having some video
Yeah.
footage and stuff like that. Or I think it was one of your music videos, New Rituals. But yeah, so that's kind of what you got to do is you kind of got to lasso people in with a single, and then just, I mean, you've been putting out some pretty cool stuff like remixes, like the slowed down versions and the vaporwave and stuff. Like you've been kind of just going, how can I kind of add a little, like a little swagger to it, you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Just try something fun. And,
yeah,
we all, music, we listen to so much music, and I feel it lets me just kind of like express myself differently, creating like that vaporwave version and, slowing them down and doing different things, making like a dance version. It kind of helps me just keep things fresh in my
Have to.
brain.
Oh, I get it. You have to do that, and especially just and not just that, but you're also bringing certain elements where most people wouldn't think post punk or goth and vaporwave. Vaporwave was just a whole nother aesthetic, a whole nother side of the subgenres. But you're just like, oh, let's just go ahead and bring it even just like the slowed down or chopped or whatever. It's like it's bringing a whole nother genre to what you're already building. And I think it's very cool and really unique. I think it's
Thanks,
neat,
man.
dude. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I just feel like we're at a point where so much music is genres are so smashed together, and you still have to find like your like niche just so, you can find your people, but I really think that everything is just so spread out right now that it makes it there's so much freedom. Like I feel like before there wasn't that much freedom.
No, you're right.
Yeah, and right now is like a perfect time to just do whatever you want and you can mix genres, you can have it um like on Thoughts and Prayers, goes into a
Mhm.
totally different kind of song.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's just do it. Let's just keep trying it and
Yeah.
see how it goes.
Tell me about that one. That one, I we were gonna kind of bring that one up last time I was gonna have you on. We kind of got everything worked out, but tell me about that one. I think that was kind of more of a tongue in cheek, kind of more of a fun song that you were kind of coming at, but it's also kind of brings this sort of would be like religious or social aspect to it. Tell me about that one because I had that on my list of things to ask you about.
Yeah, so I I had that riff for man years,
Yeah.
and I wrote it when there was a mass shooting in El Paso, my hometown.
Yes.
And I had I had kind of been into, social
Of course.
um
Yeah, I know that. I've been following you like on like threads and stuff like that. You really post
yeah,
threads with you combine music and your sort of your outlook on politics and social and everything like that. I just want to let people know, follow you on thread.
yeah.
It's really cool, but go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. So I had never, I mean, I've always kind of been in it,
Yeah.
but I think after that happened, it affected me so much.
Yeah.
Like I had friends that used to work at the mall right next to the Walmart, and they left and they came to our house, and they stayed there for the day until, he was apprehended and stuff. And it just it I didn't really know how much it affected me till maybe like, a few months later, and it just sits in your brain. So um since then I just really dove into like a lot of social issues and um I guess deeper than I really had. And
Of course.
when I think about it now, it does consume a lot of my time, just reading about these things. And um but yeah, so that song, it's kind of it is the play on words, thoughts and prayers, and it's kind of like I I'm I play around too much sometimes. I
Okay.
have a good sense of humor,
Yeah, of
so
course.
I
Yeah.
just kind of wanted to mix it and you know have it as a way to catch people's attention, and then bring in the other aspects of that song with everything that's going on. And I just I'm when I was in, and I'm sure you too. Just being Americans, we have like mass shootings in schools and stuff, and there's just like
Mhm.
nothing's changed. So I
Yeah.
really wanted to bring light to that, and just how we kind of live in this cycle of thoughts and prayers. And
Oh
uh,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
so
it's a typical like it's almost become a meme now where
yeah,
if something happens, it's everybody's quick response is the less I can do, I'll just put it on social media so people know
yeah,
I feel. But
yeah,
after this, it's like, well, then I'll put this out and then I'll forget. You know what I mean? But it we need to start understanding that things need to hit us a little bit harder. We need to be a little bit more empathetic, and not just that, but have a understanding of fellow man and how what can we do to change the aspects, whether it's mass
yeah,
shootings,
sure.
whether it's people being deported with ICE and stuff like that. What can we do to make change? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And whether it's writing like senators and getting really active or protesting, whatever it is, and I've also like during COVID, I had started this Facebook group to help like small businesses promote themselves because I,
What's it
I used to
called?
have a design business and um, I also had a recording studio at one point. So, I was just trying to get people to support each other and, find like masks and stuff like that. So, everyone does things their own way, but I really think after that 2019 incident, it just really like hit a nerve. And
Of course.
because before that, I've always been a very empathetic person,
Yeah.
but it just kind of like sparked something in me.
Yeah. What's your thoughts and feelings about because I've been getting a lot more people who are in the Latin music and like my last interview, he was Latin and
Yeah.
he lives in Kansas City. And I want to know your I'm giving you a platform. What's your thoughts and feelings on what's going on currently with, the president and the deportation issue? What's your I want your input. I don't want to hear, from anybody. I want to hear your input.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a loaded answer.
It's up to you. You can share as much as
Yeah.
you want. I mean, I understand this is kind of like a podcast, it's an early thing, but I like to give people a platform to express themselves without this sort of negative judgment or just to be like,
Yeah.
let me unload. Like, how do you feel?
Yeah. So, I posted on Threads the other day that's never been about like doing it right. And, so many people say, oh, they're not doing it right, they're here illegally and all this stuff. But, you know, the the people who were here were like Native Americans.
Oh.
And then, we set up all these structures
Mm-hmm.
that push them out. And, it's just kind of like a moving goalpost all the time of what's right and what isn't right. And I'm a first generation, so I, you know, I know some people they change as they
Of course.
grow and stuff, but I feel like I've gotten more empathetic towards, that struggle of, you come to a different country and I just think obviously it's not right.
Of course.
And, I think it just boils down to really taking us back to the 1950s, how things were, like so
Yeah.
much policy that's being written and the way things are going. It's like trying to move us all the way back to the 1950s. And there was still segregation, like I'm from Texas. So, and even in El Paso, which is like predominantly Hispanic,
Mm-hmm.
we had signs up. Obviously, I wasn't around then, but, that said no, um, like no colors, no Mexicans, and no dogs and stuff. And like putting those like a dog in the same sentence as,
Yeah.
people and it's just crazy. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's just getting pushed back to that and, no accountability for, actions and then, ICE wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy. It's obviously like a big Gestapo thing and it's there's things we can do obviously. So I encourage anyone to do anything you can, if it's protesting or if it's reaching out to your senators. But if you're in Texas, sometimes it
Yep.
doesn't work that much. But
I
yeah, just do anything you can just to support people. And um, yeah, it's a loaded answer. And
It is a bit of a load. I mean, I don't
yeah,
want people like any of my episodes of podcast. There's people who are
yeah,
very socially and politically conscious, and most people are that I talk to are more on the left, which is I'm a little bit more comfortable with, because I live in a
yeah,
small city where it's predominantly right. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
things where I like to hear everybody's input,
yeah,
and it just seems like we're all kind of on the same page at this point. And even
yeah,
just with everything I'm seeing online, I mean, I think we can all agree, and it's just like we don't need to be set back. We need to be pressing forward. We need
yes,
press forward. We need to quit going backwards. You know what I mean?
yeah. We really do because there's, that's not progress.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating seeing things move back and back. And even like today I saw this thing where they're renaming a bunch of army bases to like their Confederate names again. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, it's just a
Yeah.
big shit show,
Oh,
So it's so
yeah.
frustrating. Um, but yeah, like I've always been into like political music and I feel like as I've gotten a little bit older, I realize a lot of things, and it just kind of like that spark turns on, like, oh yeah, like I never thought about that, that's how I was, and uh, I like to ruffle feathers a little, and it's just how we are sometimes. But you just, I guess, you more self-reflection, you start saying things about yourself, and I do like to hear like other people's opinions and see where they stand, because you know obviously with so many people coming in, there needs to be a way to you know keep them, to help them, and
Guide them, kind of guide
yeah,
them to
guide
the right
them,
path.
like
You know what I mean?
programs and stuff.
Yeah.
But and it is like, growing up on the border, you've always seen people cross,
Mm,
and but when there's like in mass, I can see how people are scared. But
right.
they're literally just trying to better their lives.
Agree. I understand.
Yeah, they're just trying to better their lives. And when people talk about like building a wall and stuff, like there's been it's been there forever.
It's been talks of it has been around for the longest time. Even when growing up with me, it's been always the
Yeah.
wall to wall. It's just like I don't think it's going to happen, honestly. So unless
Yeah.
and really someone comes in and really just like puts all their effort into that, and it just becomes this whole to do. But I think a lot of people, if that came down to it, I think a lot of people would be like, no, no more walls, no more this shit, no more that shit. Let's stop the nonsense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and growing up in El Paso, we're right next to Juarez, Mexico. So,
Yep.
they're so intertwined. They're called sister cities. So,
Yeah.
they're so intertwined. People come back and forth, and have family on both sides. And we've seen people cross over for forever. And it's yeah, it's just like, well, then obviously something needs to be done
Right.
to help these people,
Of
so they
course.
don't have to risk their lives,
Yep.
and make that process smoother. And even when people would claim asylum, it said you just had to claim asylum and that was it. And then they start getting to a process, people are like, well, they're not doing it right, but they're doing it right. That's what it
Right.
says. Just because you don't like it.
And it's a weird process because it just feels like it's a lot of feet dragging, especially when people want to go through it the legal way. Why wouldn't they
Yeah.
set up a 24-hour application process or, you know, you know what I mean? Because we live in a time where shit, dude, I work a factory job and it's 24 hours and there's people who take versus
Yeah.
shifts. So why not set up a guide process or a like an application process where we can put more footwork into getting people in legally in the right way, and put more effort, put more money, put more time into helping other people that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So that would be cool to see a lot of that progress. But let's go and get focused back on you. Let's give everybody a bit of a backstory on you. So you brought up you grew up in El Paso, Texas. Tell me about growing up. Tell me about your family if you want to get into that. Tell me about, childhood into youth and how you got into music and everything like that. Tell me everything about you.
Yeah, so I was born in El Paso, and I was a military brat, so we moved around a little bit.
Yep.
But then we moved back when my parents split up, and I've most of my life has been there. We lived in New York very, very, very briefly, and then we moved to Minnesota, me and my wife. And I think musically, so I found out maybe like a week ago that Al Jorgensen created this song for the RoboCop soundtrack.
Yeah.
And I had like no clue, but like that was one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
And that scene when I found the clip and I heard it, I was like, man, how, like, this explains like everything. This explains everything, because the drum sounds and
Yep.
just the whole production of the song, it
Yeah.
it literally just explained like
That's
my
awesome.
music taste and like what I create, and how like deep seated of a
Of
core memory that you
course.
know it's crazy. So but I think there, and then listening to like The Doors,
Hmm.
uh, always been like a big Jim Morrison fan.
Yep.
And I also like love like Pink Floyd, and
Oh yeah.
just kind of the psychedelic stuff. And I used to watch The Wall,
Yeah.
like
Me too. Oh.
Yeah.
Dude, I
Yeah.
was obsessed. I remember the first time I rent that movie, I rented it, from a,
Yeah.
you know, and then
Yeah.
eventually that was my introduction to Pink Floyd. And after
Nice.
that, I just was like a sponge with everything. I got their early psychedelics, their
Nice.
experimental mid stuff, and then when they became more popular, well known after, with Dark Side of the Moon and everything on.
Yeah.
Man, I became obsessed, dude. I get it.
Yeah.
And I love
Same.
psychedelic music. It's my favorite. So
Same. And it like I probably shouldn't have watched it at the age I watched it.
same here,
You know,
right?
like yeah, like so many things. But I my best friend, he actually does like my mixing and mastering,
Hmm.
JJ Caballero. He texted me one night and he's like, "Hey, what are you up to?" I was like, "Oh, just watching a movie." And like this was years back. And he's
Yeah,
like, "Are you watching The Wall?" And I was like, "How did you know?" He's like, "That's all you watch, man. Like, what do you mean? Like, I know what you're gonna watch." So I
funny.
like that movie is so just like ingrained in me. And
Yep.
also, growing up like The Lost Boys, that was
Hmm.
one of my favorite movies. Dracula, just horror movies and stuff. I've always been kind of into the darker side of things.
Yeah.
And in high school, I was a really big metalhead, like,
Yeah.
all black, and I've I've always been into metal, but I just really decided to take the plunge, and I was really into like death metal,
Hmm.
um, even bands like Exhumed, um, and yeah, that was me. And after that, I kind of wanted to not necessarily reinvent myself, but I wanted to open myself up to like different things, and um, so I used to play in like in a metalcore band, and then we evolved into like a rock and roll band because we
Okay.
just kind of got tired of. We were like, let's just try something new. We
Adjust
started,
the scene a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we started incorporating keyboards and just different things, and I think we were all on the same page where it was fun, but we wanted to try some new stuff, so we started evolving into more of like a rock and roll band. And we had some friends who was really into like T-Rex
Yeah.
and like Roxy music. So
Glam rock,
really,
garage
yeah,
rock.
he really introduced me to like a lot of glam rock aside from like, David Bowie, who like
Of
I
course.
love Bowie.
Of course.
Yeah, but he really got me into a lot of that and like the MC5
Hmm.
and the New York Dolls and stuff. So we we kind of evolved into that, and then our singer left, so I took over,
Hmm.
and we're around for a few years. We got to open for the Sounds, which was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
That's bad.
yeah, we got to play in LA a few times, and then kind of disbanded just because I wanted to finish up school and stuff, and um, I set music aside for a little while, and I I was really just doing like my own thing. I had always created music, like still constantly working on music, but um, just focusing more on like my personal life and
Of course.
stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I understand that.
I had a design business. I started recording studio. I left that. I started another one, and then I left that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was at that studio, I my last one, that's where I really started doing more like the dead electrics and really
Yeah.
taking advantage of, having the resources. So, um, I, put out patients, and then COVID happened. So, it's kind of same thing. I was like, well, I need to running two businesses at the same time was a lot,
Yeah, of course.
and trying to keep up with music, it just kind of fell in between. And um, so, after that, I was like, okay, I need to kind of get back on because no matter what, I always create music, but that flow of, putting out music and marketing and that whole cycle, well, I was doing everything else. It just took so much mental capacity from me that I was like, I need a break. I'm burnt out. So, we moved around a little bit, and then when we got here to Minnesota, it was kind of nice because it was a fresh start
Hmm.
and kind of away from everything, a little calmer because New York's so busy, and
Hmm.
um, I would record vocals and stuff, and you hear honking in the back, and you just
Yep.
hear like everything else.
Right.
So, we got here, it was a little calmer, and it was nice. It really let me just kind of reset in my brain and
Yeah.
just kind of restart and be like, okay, well, what's the next step?
Hmm.
So that's where I put out Say Something.
Hmm.
And I honestly wasn't even sure, like, lyric wise, what to do for that song. I had like the whole song set up, and I was sitting and I was like, I had to say something.
Right.
I was like, oh, let's just start there, like say something. And I just pulled out the microphone and went on a like a just train of thought, like, okay, let's just start going and say something. And I just started thinking about life. You're expected to, you know, like live a certain way, fall in love, and then you end up dying in the end. We all, just this cycle. So that's kind of
Like a
how it
stream of
seems.
consciousness type thing.
Yeah.
Where it's just like let's just feel it out and just let the recording happen.
Yeah, exactly. And
That's cool.
um, so after that, I was like, this is a good vibe, and just kind of kept moving on from there, and finished up Thoughts and Prayers,
Mhm.
and I have a batch of songs that I've been working on to finish up and put out because um, my next thing is to start playing live out here.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
Yeah, like I went to go see Night Rituals. He's in I think he's in Austin now.
Yeah,
But he opened for Urban Heat, so I went to go talk to him, and
that's cool.
it was really cool because you just talk to these people online, and when you
Yeah,
kind of put um, a face to it, and you can just talk to each other, it's a nice way to connect and stuff. So he was asking me how the scene was in St. Paul,
yeah,
Minneapolis, and I was like, man, I'm still kind of new here, and
yeah,
um, talking to him really made me want to like, okay, I need to be able to help others, obviously, that come through,
yeah,
and for myself really get into the scene here.
yeah.
um, so yeah, that's kind of my next step. I've reached out to a few local bands and they've been really helpful.
Good.
I've reached out to booking and
Mhm.
just kind of get things going. I actually went to it's called Micro Center. It's like a Best Buy kind of store,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and to go get some cables and stuff that I needed just to kind of get things moving again. So yeah,
That,
that's kind of where I'm at with that.
that's awesome. I know a lot of few. I mean, I've had a few on my pod that are from Minnesota. I'll see if I can kind of
Oh yeah, that's
link you
amazing.
up together. Because I know they've been really generating something out there in Minnesota, and just they really got a scene going, and I'd really like
Yeah,
you would fit in so perfectly. So let me
thank you.
take a note real quick and see if I can. I'll send you, and I'll try to get you in with band's called Toilet Rats. It's Tommy.
Oh yeah, yeah. I follow him on
Yeah,
social media. I need to connect with them. Yeah.
yeah, please do, and just let them know, hey, I sent you or whatever. You're on my pod, and I'm sure I'll send it to them and go, hey, here's you on the podcast. Just
Yeah.
do what you can because I that's kind of what this whole podcast is for. Let's talk
Nice.
music. Let's get our story out. Let's try and connect as people and as artists. Where it's hard to kind of connect on social media because there's so much coming at you where
Yeah.
you can only take things in small bits where I think as artists I think we need to understand each other as people and because you go on roads and you link up with other musicians where it's like oh this person gives me a bad vibe or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like so it's important to really find a connection
Yeah, you need that human connection, and
yeah.
'cause, yeah, you might vibe online a little, but you meet in person, you're like, well, we don't really have as much in common as I thought we did, or you're just, you're just two different personalities, and you don't mesh as well, or you meet and you're like, oh man, like you just hit it off and you become best friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back in El Paso. I mean, that was a wild scene. I know certain bands that came out of there, I think at the drive-in,
Yeah.
Volta, all of that. Were you involved? I mean, did you see any of that kind of generate? Were you influenced by that, or were you kind of just in the background, kind of just vibing at your own type of,
Yeah.
style and
So,
everything?
being from El Paso, they're one of the bigger bands that made
Yeah.
it out. And my myself and friends were usually influenced by, at the drive-in, because to us, like El Paso's its own bubble.
Yeah.
We're so far from the rest of Texas, like the other big cities,
Mhm.
and we're like 6 hours from like Phoenix.
Yeah.
So it's like this its own little bubble.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I feel like it's now things are a little different, but before, like just to push yourself and get your music out, it took so much more work. because we're not in an area like, Dallas. You can drive to San Antonio, Houston, Austin, and it's, a couple hours, but to get from El Paso to Dallas, it's like 10 hours.
Yeah, our
So,
drive. Yeah.
our weekenders would be like Phoenix or like Santa Fe,
Mhm.
Albuquerque, and at the driving obviously was a big influence. And I don't think I was really around for that.
Mhm.
Um, but the metal bands that I saw growing up that were local bands,
Yeah.
I can't remember a lot of them right now, but
Mhm.
they were kind of a big influence on me because I would see them open for bigger bands like
Yeah.
Deicide or
Oh, yeah.
um, stuff like that. So that was really cool seeing that you're able to do that and connect with these musicians. And at the drive-in, see them being able to, tour the world and just a little band from El Paso.
Right. What was getting into music? Where does it guitar? Was it drums? Did you just kind of naturally gravitate towards something? Like, what was your sort of building blocks? Were you listening to music and going, "Ooh, I want to do that"? How was your sort of process in, here's me as somebody, now here's me getting into music? Were you like in
Yeah.
garage bands and stuff like that? Like, tell me about that sort of building aspect.
Yeah. So I think one of the first was watching La Bamba
Mhm.
with,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Love it. Yes.
Yeah, and even though that he's not like a Latin American,
Yeah.
but just seeing that representation
Of course.
like in the movie,
Yeah.
it really inspired me. And um so, and the music, like that
Oh,
classic,
so good.
I love it. So it went from there, and then seeing like Jim Morrison, and just kind of evolved. But I think the first thing was a guitar,
Hmm.
and I had wanted to play guitar. I finally was able to pick up a guitar in high
And
school.
was it?
It was a classical guitar, so I learned classical guitar, and I did that for a few years, and then in college I did like a little bit of jazz,
Yeah.
and I love jazz. Sometimes I still listen to jazz, and I'll pick up a book and just try to.
It's so technical because as a drummer,
Yeah.
like it can
Oh,
go
you drum?
really.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do drums and keys. I usually don't put that out there because it's like, mostly want to focus on the podcast. But yeah,
Yeah.
drums, keys, I mean, more synth gear, not like piano or anything. But dude, when you're trying to play jazz, and I tried to do the jazz band in high school, and I'm not a sheet music guy. Like I'm
Yeah.
feel it. You know what I mean? What kind of
Yeah.
musician were you? Were you listen to music and play? I mean, did you do tablatures or were you how was your learning process?
Yeah. So I think most of it was, I think I was the opposite. I was more of a sheet music guy,
Okay.
and then tabs,
Yeah.
and then sheet music. And then now it's a little bit of a mix, because
Okay.
in school,
Yeah.
through jazz, they tell you a lot to learn,
Oh yeah.
just by listening, and
Yeah.
then, obviously look at the sheet music and stuff, but you can make changes. So, um, I'll try to, if I want to learn a song, sometimes I just look it up. It's faster.
Mhm.
So I don't have to sit there and noodle and but yeah, I'm like, okay, I gotta sit here and figure out this chord. It's like I need to speed things up to write it.
Are you like a visual, like look up videos now? I've become more of a visual learner now, and sometimes audio, but look up a video and go and see
Yeah.
someone going, or whatever, and I go, okay,
Yeah.
I can see that. Is that kind of your learning aspect?
I when it comes to music, I think I need like the technical
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
Um, so like I'll look for like, the tabs of the sheet music and then go from there.
Cool.
And because sometimes like I'll watch videos and I'll hear the way someone plays it,
Yeah.
but it might be different from the song, and I hear something like, well, that sounds like they could have played that chord somewhere else, just the
Yeah.
way the string sounds. So I don't, I guess I'm not that much of a visual learner when it comes to music.
Yeah.
Everything else I am, though. I need to like see it. Someone has to show me.
Mm.
And I have to sit there and I'm like, okay, explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old and show me like step by step,
I get it.
Because
I get it.
yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So El Paso, was it the Dead Electrics? Was that your sort of first band? And then, that kind of fell to the wayside and you kind of took the name. Is that right?
So the first the first band I was in, we were called Only Death Is Sure,
Okay.
and we would just shorten it to Otis.
Yeah.
And we were a three-piece for a long time. It was just myself on guitar, we had drummer, and then our vocalist.
Hmm.
But I would use these really heavy strings,
Yeah.
so I would, just like stereo the sound.
Yeah.
And then we finally got a bassist. We just had so many rotating bassists through that band.
Yeah.
It was nuts. And we
It is
finally
what
found
it
someone
is.
that yeah, that just fit, and he was a really good fit. So we played, that's where we really like picked up steam and played more shows.
Yeah.
Um and it was a really tight-knit scene. It was nice. And then after that, we started evolving into the band was called BB Gun Johnny.
Okay. BB Gun Johnny.
And yeah, that was like more rock and roll, even like by the name and
Yeah.
stuff. So
Mhm.
we kept kind of the same lineup, but I don't even remember for our basis situation. We had kind of the same. It was kind of weird. We always had an issue just finding like a basis. We
Yeah.
would have
It's either
someone,
a drummer
yeah,
or a bassist. I get it. Yeah.
yeah. We would have like rotating bases, and then our singer left, and I just took over vocal duties. I was like, well, I'll do it.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
I had always wanted to sing, and I had taken like some voice classes and
Mhm.
stuff, so I was like, I'll just do it. I'll just jump in. Um, and even from there, just like a band, we have some rotating lineups,
Yeah.
but we're pretty solid for a little bit, and we're like, okay, let's start taking this a little more seriously. So a friend of mine, he um he kind of helped guide me a lot on like the music industry.
Mentor.
And yeah, he helped me, just kind of like, this is how you set up a tour. This is how, you should start setting up your shows, because we would play every weekend.
Yeah.
And he's like, you guys need to like scale back,
Yeah.
and let's put your music on an EP.
Mhm.
That way you have something to sell, promote. You start having a product, your merch and all that stuff. So he kind of really helped me like fine tune instead of just like running on, full blast the whole time.
No. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, so he helped me like set up tours. He really showed me like methods on how to get that set up, how to network, and get those bigger gigs. He helped us get that sound show, and play at the Viper Room and stuff. So yeah, it was really cool. He really helped me a lot. Um, and when we started touring, I used to work at Hot Topic. I think we were talking
Me
about that
too.
online.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
in the
I'm
golden
sure
era of
like,
Hot Topic. Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
yeah, like I'm sure you had a ton of bands come in,
Oh, absolutely.
So like same, and I had a few bands come in, and they would like hustle their CDs outside of
Yeah.
the store, and they're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Hey, do you mind?" I'm like, "No, dude, like do your thing."
Yeah.
So, I saw that and I was like, we should do that too. So we every city we'd go to Hot Topic,
Hmm.
and try to promote a show, go sell CDs throughout the mall, and then go play.
Oh my God, that's
And
funny. Yes, we
yeah,
used to do that too. I'm in
yeah,
a band, not to cut you off, but there was
oh,
one
yeah, yeah,
like, oh, they were in St. Louis and they were like, well, we're trying to pay for our van rent repairs and stuff. So they were literally just going, walking around,
hmm
hey, listen to like it was like a portable CD player, and he's like, here, listen to
yeah,
the band. And
yeah,
it's like, oh, dude, I'm like, I don't even have to listen to it. I'm like, I know who you guys are. Here, I'll just buy the CD and,
yeah,
I'll help you guys as much as I can because I was always very supportive of the scene. And oh, yeah, Hot Topic, always let locals in, if we could help them push or promote their music, just, leave a stack of flyers or some
yeah,
CDs over there at the checkout. Or I'd go, hey, I would, as someone who worked there, I go, hey, check out this
yeah.
band.
Here's a
What I mean?
show.
Try and do what you can to promote. Yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
Same. Yeah, same. I would do the same, and I would see bands do that. So I had actually found an iPod like mini,
Yeah.
and so I don't know where I found it, but I raced all the music that was on there, and that's what we would take on tour, and go do the same thing. Go to people, hey, you look like you're into this kind of music, and the whole spiel. Let them listen to like 15 seconds of a song and see if they want to buy a CD.
Yeah.
And there was that point in Hot Topic history. I don't know if you remember where they would have shows inside the
Oh,
stores.
yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so it was so cool because they set us up like during South by Southwest. We
Hmm.
played all the
Perfect spot.
stores in,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, in Austin and San Antonio. And so we got to do a little tour like that, and that was really cool because afterwards we went to South by Southwest and just try to promote and
Oh,
go network and stuff. It was a lot of fun.
that's awesome. Do you got any like touring stories, anything like that? Anything memorable or whatever that you like to share?
Yeah.
Anything that
Oh,
stands out too, either. You know what I mean? Something that's like, oh, this was a moment that I'll remember on this tour. Like,
yeah. I think that South by Southwest, the Hot Topic was really cool,
mhm.
and I think playing our first show at the Viper Room, it was so early.
What was
Like we
that?
weren't even on the marquee,
Yeah.
and we opened, and I had spent so many hours just inviting people online,
Oh God.
and
Yes.
yeah,
What
yeah.
was that? Was that MySpace or Facebook at the time? What was that?
Um, I think it was, I want to say MySpace,
Yeah.
and I sat there for hours,
Oh,
just messaging people, hey, we're gonna be in LA, we're gonna be in LA, we're at the Viper Room, I can put you on a guest list. And I had a handful of friends show up, maybe like three or four.
yeah.
And then the second time around, we got to headline it,
Ooh.
and it was different. So we had like, more bands. We had bands under us. We're at the top, and we had, like a good sized crowd. So it was nice. It was a nice way to, turn it. But that first tour was so rough. Like
Oh.
our drummer, he had left, I think, before, like 2 weeks before the tour started. So three of us went and we played a show in, I think it was Tucson or Tempe, one of the two. But we played like a horrible show. We were just like, man, and like,
Everything was just off. Just the whole vibe was off.
yeah, everything was off. And then, well, our old bassist, that's who it was. So my friend Timon, he used to live in LA. He was our bassist for a while, and then I think he moved, so we had to find somebody else. But he filled in on drums.
Mhm.
But I asked him, I was like, "Hey man, do you still remember these songs?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, like a little bit." And he played drums enough like to get by where it sounded solid.
Just keep the
Uh,
beat. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and they weren't complex songs, it was rock and roll.
Right.
So I asked him, I was like, hey, can you fill in on drums? Because, our drummer, this and that. So we booked a rehearsal space the day before. So
Mhm.
we drove, from El Paso to wherever in Arizona and then to LA. And we ended up sleeping in the car because
Mhm. Oh yeah.
like, I think he was at work or something. But, we went and rehearsed.
Mhm.
And then the next day we did the show. And I think that happened the second time around too. I was like, hey man, I kind of need you to fill in again if you can. It was just like so many issues with drummers. It was
Of
always
course.
the
Yeah.
drummer
Bass and
leaving.
drummers. I've always said just always issues. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's what really got me into just like starting to experiment with drum machines
Yep.
and
Mhm.
like music production. I just needed something consistent for
I
me
need
to
something permanent. You know what I mean? Because like
yeah.
me being a drummer, I've always been asked, "Hey, can you let's collab, let's do this, let's do that." I've always been, look, if I can't nail anything down, then I'm not going to commit to anything just because,
Yeah.
work life, family, whatever it may be at the
Yeah.
time, and even just certain bands where you just don't vibe with them. And it's like, I don't want to commit. So for me, I've always been very picky about how I see a vision of an album or something like that because I've had where I've been in a band and like example, I was in this I grew up in the church, so I was in this sort of Christian
Okay, cool.
band. The pastor's son, he kind of had his own project, and I was like, hey, let's not keep, because I mean, I'm not ragging on Christian music, but it's so cookie cutter and it's so copy
Yeah.
and it just gets old. And he was always a fan of post punk, New
Nice.
Order, Joy Division,
Yeah.
and I was like, let's go towards that, but let's be different because I know there's nobody doing that. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah, let's try
a lot of
this.
it's you got Christian metal, you got Christian alternative, you got the Christian adult contemporary type stuff, but you don't have this you know path of
Yeah.
something other. And so I suggested that idea. I said, hey, let's experiment more in the studio. I even suggested, hey, since I'm on drums, let's experiment with the sound. Let's add some delay,
Nice.
let's add some reverb, kind of like with what Martin Hannett did with Joy Division on the first album.
Yeah.
He hated that idea. He was like, "Oh, I'm not doing that." But
Yeah.
it was just one of those things where it was like that was like my first like, you know what? No, if we're not here as
Ben.
a band to like expand or work together, then I'm out. And so that's
Yeah.
when I started just my project, just all electronic drum machines. I started studying up on drum machines and synthesizers and stuff like that. And that was my villain story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's hard, man. Like, it's a lot of personalities.
It,
Like with the first band, um, they needed a guitar player, and the drummer's girlfriend, I had her for class. Like we went to different high schools, but she's like, "Hey, do you want to try out for this band?" And I was like, "Sure." And I tried out and stuff, and I was so nervous, but we just clicked.
mhm.
And we all had a good vibe where we're able to work and take each other's feedback into consideration,
Yeah.
and it really worked. But then as we started evolving into like a more of a like rock and roll band, because we split for a while, after the first band we split, and then we're like, hey, let's just try something new, and we got back together. And it was, we're all growing up, so things were kind of, you know, we weren't out on the same page as much anymore, I
Right.
guess, like musically. And so that's where I kind of just started taking the reins of everything. And
Right.
because then, yeah, you also kind of, like you were saying, with your story, you want to have to kind of take the reins and kind of keep a project,
Of course.
flowing,
Yeah.
and yeah, keep that progress.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you want to be comfortable with it. You don't want to add that sort of extra weight of like a responsibility where you have to worry about everyone else and everything like that. So and when you have 100% control and now and with it now being more accessible where you
Yeah,
have
for sure.
the gear where you can, and even just the use of digital audio workshops, it's like, oh, I
Yeah.
can take absolute control of this thing. Is that kind of what happened with the Dead Electrics then?
Yeah, so I had uh, one project that just never really saw the light. It was just a solo project, and I recorded a few songs. And one, it had kind of an industrial vibe, but another was very pop sounding, and it was all over the place. And I think that project really helped me learn more about myself, and what I listen to, and how to really just, like you're saying, you know when it's 100% you.
Yeah.
So I had to really learn to, like, okay, it's gotta make sense. It's gotta make sense because you're all over the place.
Oh yeah.
And, so I would just keep writing and writing and just trying to get better at it. And I I tend to overthink, so
Of course. Oh my
I was
God.
like, what
My
about
life.
if this is this pro? Yeah, and this is this project. So I was like, no, dude, just write these songs and then you can hash it out. I started learning about like Michael Jackson, how many songs they wrote for Thriller, and how many songs didn't make it to the album. So I was like, just keep writing, man. And even now, I still kind of keep that ethos. I'll try to write something, depending how busy I am, at least every day, a little snippet and stuff. But um, just try to write, and then a lot of stuff doesn't make the cut, but maybe later some of it comes back, or I can steal a drum part that I like, or a guitar riff, and use it for something else. And because even for like songs post Patience,
Hmm.
like that gap,
Yeah.
I put out new rituals, and then we're moving around,
Yeah.
so I didn't really put out any music in between.
Hmm.
And I feel like with new rituals, it was kind of me putting it out there to the universe, starting fresh.
Of course. Of course.
And it kind of did. Because I don't know if you've seen the music video.
Great music video.
Thank you. David Corral in El Paso did it. He's amazing.
Cool.
But I had this dream, and it was literally just like the music video. And I told him about it. I was like, hey man, I had this crazy dream where I like was in the desert, and I was digging up a body, but when I found the body, it was my body. And I was like, it was like a weird dream. So he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, man, it's kind of like I have really strange dreams. So that whole concept kind of came to me in a dream, and they're like, why don't we make it like Eyes Wide Shut, with the masks on, and I was like, yeah. So we're talking about it, and we found, El Paso's mainly desert, so we found an area where we could shoot it, like light some stuff on fire and
Style, yeah.
not not create a fire hazard out there. But it was a lot of fun, man, and it was very Texas though, because we're filming our video and maybe like 100 yards away were some people shooting guns and stuff. So towards the end, we're like, I hope no gun, like no bullets stray, because you could hear them shooting. We could see them, and they were just kind of watching us, wondering what we're doing, like lighting this fake body on fire and
Yeah,
stuff. But
that's awesome.
um,
Such a cool video. I'll have to post that in the description for everybody to check that one out. But that's cool.
thanks.
Hey, there's a story behind that because I've always tried to ask certain, artists where it's like, hey, this music video, what was? Oh, we were just kind of goofing around. It's like, oh, okay. But
Yeah.
yeah, for the first time, I feel like I've heard the music video story where it's like, no, I had a dream and we put it together, me and a guy, and just, try to develop that. It's so cool, man. That's so neat.
Yeah, it was a really weird dream, but I was like, this is good for a music video, and
No idea.
um, my friend JJ Caballero, the one he wrote most of the music, at least like the core structure of it, and I just built on it, and that song was really hard for me to write because I'm used to writing the music and then adding what I feel to it. So there was weeks of me asking him, okay, like what did you feel during this song? And just trying to get some feedback. And I really had to dig deep, and I just started, experimenting and trying new things, and he helped me with the melody and stuff. But yeah, with that video, that's how that one came about. And for Meet Me in the Shadows, the first single, I wanted to put together like a Lost Boys meets Thriller kind of music video. And so that was a lot of fun, just something a little more, that song's a little more dancey. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of what with like going back to like Break My Heart.
Yeah.
It kind of still brings it back to like the beginning of the Dead Electrics
Hmm.
and everything in between. So I feel like for me, um, like we were saying earlier, kind of overthink things, but I'm trying to get more into a flow of just putting out that batch of work. Yeah, exactly. And just keep putting it out and putting it out.
That's like a month,
And
just trying to work it out. And yeah, like what's your
yeah,
usual kind of when you get into the mode, is it like, okay, I'll do you just like if you're working on a song or lyric ideas, do you write it down? Do you pick up your phone and talk into it or take notes? Or do you usually go and sit in front of an instrument? And do you have a primary instrument, keys or guitar? Anything like
yeah.
what's your usual here's how I work out? And it's like lyrics, music, like what's your usual primary?
So lyrics, I write a lot of lyrics on my phone. I used to write a lot by hand. I still do every now and then if I just feel like it's not coming out right, like through typing.
I work it out.
So yeah, sometimes the digital and analog, it feels different. Um,
Natural, yeah.
But yeah, but you don't always have like a pen and paper, so I've been trying to get better. So usually I'll start with the drums and
That's crazy. I do that too.
yeah, yeah,
That's so cool hearing it from someone who's not primary a drummer. That's
yeah.
cool. Cool. But yeah, got
Yeah, I need like a rhythm to
yeah.
find like, okay, how's this song gonna go? So I usually start with drums. Every now and then I tried during that failed music project between before the Dead Electrics, I really tried to just take a more traditional, like write out chords and changes and then get into the music, or like the drums, but it was so hard for me, and I felt like I was just going against the flow. So I said, no, I need to. I'm a person that starts with drums, like
Oh, it's
so
okay.
I'll program drums. Usually I'll go through like my batch of samples for different
Hmm.
different drum sounds, and I'll think about how I want it to sound, and if I want like a bass drum or like a punchier, and what kind of snare, and then I'll just build from there. I use Machina, so that helps me
Gonna ask
so much.
you use
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah, it's so for me when I used it, it was like life changing
Yes.
because I used to do like one song that I finally brought back that I'm working on is I sat there and dragged and dropped all the drum samples and like copy paste. It took forever.
Oh, it
It
takes
took so long, and with Machina, I can, for those that don't use it, you can set up,
time. Yeah.
like a verse, a chorus, or like, you know, create duplicate the chorus and then mess around with it. So the workflow has been so much faster. So I'll use that, and then I'll just record into it directly with my guitar, um, or bass. Usually it's drums, bass, guitar, and then the vocals are last after I add keys and stuff.
Cool. Good deal. And then your usual inspiration, does it come from, emotions? Does it, I mean, because some people will be like, oh, I read a book and I felt something, or I
Yeah,
went for a walk, or a movie. Because you did bring up, it seems like you're a pretty big movie fan like I am. Do you find inspiration pretty much from anywhere and anything?
I do. A lot of it is, sometimes I listen to, I'm kind of nosy and I'll I like the people watching
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
sometimes like people's conversations and they'll say something that I would have never have thought to say. Like there was a song Bougie Like You on Patience,
Huh?
and I forgot what some conversation someone was having, but they're like, yeah, I'm not bougie like you. And it just sounded cool. I was like, oh yeah. And it just I kind of tweaked it and stuff. But other people's conversations or just if I find like a grouping of words that I really like, I'll put that together and or like a word that I just feel
Mhm.
catches something in me,
Yeah.
then I'll write it down and add it to my long list in my notes app.
Is there a song that was probably the hardest or most difficult one to write?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think Break My Heart was
Yeah.
that song took me a while. It was in pieces because it started out sounding a little bit more like the Strokes,
Hmm.
and I had the drums, and then I started playing the guitar, like the changes for it,
Yeah.
and I liked it, but I felt really stuck. Um, so then I was like, okay, this sounds good. Let's throw some keys on there, and it was just really, I don't know. I was having such a hard time with that song. And a friend of mine, he went through a breakup and he posted something on Facebook. And, you know, I was reading it. He said something like, "Oh, like why'd you break my heart?"
Mm.
And I was like, "Oh, damn." I was like, but it just like sparked something in my brain. I was like, "Yeah, that's a good start." That's a good start. And I
Absolutely.
just sat there and wrote out the lyrics and added, some of my like experiences as well, through heartbreak and stuff. Um, like in the lyrics, someone would call me. I don't know why every time at 3 a.m. she would always call me,
Yeah.
and just like it was always at 3,
Yeah.
and so I just sprinkled in my some of my experiences because I feel like it would be disingenuous to just like write without adding in something that I experienced in there. Um, but yeah, I'll usually do that or just kind of like would say something, just like a chain of thought, like, okay, let's just keep writing and then I'll edit it, do stuff like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, when it comes to Dead Electrics, you want everything to be like, this is me as raw as it could be, or are you trying to do more of like a persona or like a character or anything like that?
I feel like it's more me, but it's also just really finding that one part in me that fits in with what I'm doing with the music and just turning it up. Um, like like style wise, I've always worn black forever,
Of course.
but I incorporated like more leather and at least just adding more things and really just dive into it and really just turn up that person who is still me, but not every part of me. It's more that like singular aspect of it and just really turn it up to 11 and um so yeah, and it helps me kind of keep it separate at least in my brain too.
Who created I guess, would it be like the album art or just the logo or whatever? It's such a cool, the one that you've been using recently for your albums. Is that you,
Yeah,
or is that someone like a friend of yours, or
that's all actually me.
that's
So
awesome. Really, that's great.
yeah, so I was, I'm a graphic designer,
Oh, for
and
real? Oh, that's cool. Tell
yeah,
me about that.
yeah. So I had a design business for like 11 years,
Mhm.
and when I was in school, that's what I went to school for. I was a music min. I used to be a music major,
Yeah.
but I switched to graphic design and then a music minor. And I've always loved like album art, um, just band logos and stuff. And especially like death metal logos
Oh, yeah.
and like black metal. They're like illegible sometimes, and just like the way they're put together is like I've always loved it. And
I love it. I
graffiti.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then graffiti has also been, a big part of like I've just always loved lettering. So I went to school for that, and I I used to design like friends merchandise, and also when I was in school, I would also like freelance whatever I could pick up just to pay for school. And with this artwork, I was like, I really need to put in that love that I think these album covers deserve. Because with Patience, I don't really love the cover. Like, I like it, I like the idea of it, but I think I'm just gonna leave it because a lot of artists kind of change the
You
artwork
have
later
to.
on.
Gotta see the because I've always been one to I appreciate the progress of something.
Yeah.
You're honing your craft. And because believe me, I was one to my high school demo was pure trash when I first started.
Yeah, I know. You listen to stuff and you're like, oh my God, why
Oh,
did I
it's
think that was good?
awful. And but I put it out on Bandcamp anyway, just going, yeah, here's where I started, and now here's where I
Yeah,
am
oh yeah.
now. And I think it's important to embrace and go, I'm changing, I'm evolving. Here's my progress. Like put it out there. I think it's great.
Yeah, that's something I realized, and I think I struggled with for a while was really being okay with the vulnerability of putting things out when even if it's not perfect, or it is you in progress. So with I think I really learned to that's something I've been dealing with, and like, okay, just put it out, just put out the song. It might not be perfect to you, but to somebody else it is. Like, I remember this interview with Cradle of Filth, and was it from the Cradle to Enslave EP?
Cradle to Enslave.
They Yeah, they said they hated that EP, and I was like, I love that EP. Like, yeah,
I
it
love that.
was just something they put out to like to end their contract,
Yeah.
and but I love that EP. It's amazing.
Damnation,
So
Damnation in the Day is probably that was my go-to,
nice.
and I love that album. I love it, and I'm like such a sucker for Cradle of Filth. Yeah, so
Yeah, my favorites, Vampire and Fairy Tales.
yeah,
Oh, so good, so good. Yeah. But yeah, I was really struggling with that, and I think I finally have a little bit more than I used to have realized, just put the stuff out, and with patience for me, I think has always been something, just to be patient, and I get a little impatient about, putting things out, and I want things done faster. And that artwork, it's like, well, that's where I was at that moment in time, so just keep it that way. But when I put out new rituals, I was like, okay, I want to really make this look a certain way, and elevate the artwork, just make it look, give it that love. So it started there, and then afterwards, when I was gonna put out new music, I was like, okay, man, you kind of had a conversation with myself.
yeah.
I was like, you design stuff for people and you make it look beautiful, you like brand them, and you need to do this for yourself. So it was a little bit of self-love,
You go.
and like, pick your logo, and don't get too caught up in your brain. Just create it and your artwork for each of these pieces. Just sit there and spend that time. And I think they're French prints,
Hmm.
like a or what is it? Or an engraving or something. That's what a lot of the artwork is. And I
Like what
just
that poster is in the back, it has that beautiful kind of ingrained French type of poster style.
Yeah, like the for Break My Heart, it's got like a crying eye,
Hmm.
and then Say Something. It has a horse that's like with
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like covered.
yeah,
So that one I just kind of copied it.
yeah.
And then Thoughts and Prayers, I found it was like these hands like coming out of a cloud, and so I just put my own twist to it, and Um, it's one is dropping, I think one is holding money and the other's reaching out to grab it, but there's like bullet holes in it. Um, and then there's bullets coming in from the sky and there's like a cross up top. So, and then the flowers and stuff. I really embraced like the colorfulness of like just Mexican culture and art, like how much color that we use in things. And when you're around things so much, you don't really, I guess, pay as much attention to it. Um, but I had ordered like these little mats for our kitchen, and it has like green, purple, blue, red, orange. It's so many colors, and it's so
Vibrant.
yeah, it's so vibrant and bright. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, the way they flow. And even one of my art teachers in college, he was he used so much vibrant color, and he would tell me, he's like, man, I love color. And he taught me a lot of color theory and stuff. But I was like, I really need to dig into that and make it a part of the artwork. So I put that together with some brutalism and like all the little circles and stuff going on the sides. So I wanted to really give it some love and pay attention to it instead of just creating something fast just to get things out.
Yeah, right. No, that's cool. A lot of just heart and love and just everything that you learned and studied and just put it all. That's I really love that album art that you did with it. And just
Thanks, man.
anytime I see it, I'm just like I like little details and stuff. And I like when I can look at an album cover and just stare at it. You know what I mean? And I hope at some point you put your stuff out on vinyl just so I can get like a
Yeah.
version of it and just stare at it and go, okay, yeah, like, oh, I love doing that. I'm a sucker for that type of stuff. So,
Yeah, same. That's what, like band logos and album artwork really got me into a lot of music as well. Like um, even just seeing like the Nine Inch Nails logo for the first time and that simple N that was backwards. And it's like my first band shirt was a Nine Inch Nails shirt.
was it?
Simple, yeah, just with the logo. But I was like, man, it just like it's such a strong impact.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I need to give myself that love that I give others and create my art the same way. So that's my next steps are putting out like physical media. I went to a record store yesterday to buy some cassettes because what I want to do is for a live show use the little Tascam recorder I have and play the music through there. So I'm gonna experiment with some things and see how it works,
Yeah.
but I needed some cassettes to start.
Oh,
And um, I forgot where we are going with that. He
cool
oh yeah,
idea.
he's telling me people who duplicate like, vinyl in town and CDs and stuff because I like to try to keep things local and that way it helps, our communities. So
Oh, I agree 100%.
yeah, so that's kind of next on the list and kind of start creating merch and stuff like that. Um,
Cool, man.
I'll probably start with some stickers and then just kind of start building from there to put out. I would really love cassettes.
Yeah.
Like, you
They're,
know?
they're becoming like a thing now where I'm starting to see more
Yeah.
people are like, oh, we're putting this out on cassette. Like vinyl was kind of like again, bringing that back and, kind of like the first building block, but then it's
Yeah.
like putting everything out on cassette now and stuff. I'm just like, that's really cool. Like, it's cool to see that stuff come right back around.
Yeah, it really is. And hopefully the next few steps, I want to create some more like um, physical media and put out like a vinyl, maybe even create like an EP with those singles
Yeah.
and just have like the remixes on there. See if I can get some other people to do some remixes, and that way those singles have a, a longer life, and
Sure.
also, just so you can enjoy it differently
Yeah.
and, blow that album artwork, blow
Yep.
it up a little bit more so people can appreciate
Stare
it.
at it, look at
Yeah, because it's
No,
it
go
took
ahead.
a while, but it was fun. It was fun. Like, I hand drew the center parts of it, and then I used some, I think it's called Heritage Type, and they have like a like I don't know where they're from, but like the flowers and stuff,
Hmm.
I think they're from there, and they're like free downloads. So they're from like these older books and stuff. So I started using those and just kind of putting it together, and I try to make it where each one has something incorporated with the song. Like on Break My Heart, there's that one flower that's like wilted, and with Say Something, there's the horse, and just decided to use the horse, and he's not looking where he's going.
Yeah, you got the
He's
blinders
just
on. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the flowers, I don't remember what they are right now, but it's very colorful and just kind of different from what I used to do. So
Oh, that's cool. And it's cool because, the Mexican heritage, everything's so colorful and vibrant. And I remember I was watching I think it was Anthony Bourdain, No Reservation or something like that, and
nice, yeah.
going over to certain countries and he went there and he's like, everything's so colorful and vibrant, like color matters and it should matter. It should matter just in life in general and everything that you generate and you work on. It's like bring this sort of colorless world alive in a way. And even just wearing black and stuff like that. But if you can add that little something to it, like with your
Yeah, exactly.
with a little color, it really pops. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't have one right now, but like I'll paint my nails like a lilac color, or I'll find some other bright colors and I'll do that, because I love black, like, but find like you said, finding those little pops, and you can make three or four colors stand out so much, or even just one, you know. So yeah, I really want to incorporate that into the artwork and really kind of build upon that, and give a little nod to my heritage and stuff.
Cool. I love that. Tell me about growing up in El Paso, and I know you kind of travel around a bit, but from El Paso now you're in Minnesota. Did that change? Did that, kind of affect you personally or, creatively or anything like that? Or has it always just kind of been about the same?
I think I think it I know culturally it was very different,
Hmm.
because in I've noticed with like Latinos how we're very, at least, like, or just in the South in general, we're a little, the way I say it, we just talk to anybody, you're like, it's easier to,
Open up.
not that that culture isn't here, but um when you can talk to a stranger at the grocery store and you can talk forever and you don't know them. But here, I don't see that as much per se, so it's a little different. And it's so cold up here, so like half of the year when it's snowing, people are so indoors. So I really think it affects like the social situations.
Of course.
Um, compared to like southern states where you don't have that, where you you might not be outside as much just because you might go to work and come back. But it did affect me because I did notice like a few cultural things as well. And also, like in El Paso, people that go there, they say everyone's so nice, and so smiley, so happy all the time. And then, going to New York, it's funny because people say New Yorkers are really rude, but I personally don't. I think obviously like everybody can be rude, but I felt like in New York, had so many people be so kind and helpful. And I look lost getting on the wrong train or something.
Yeah.
They're so helpful.
Yeah.
Uh, and then moving here, I think I was still trying to kind of figure out where I was in the world. Um, and I felt a little more isolated because we moved, and then, it started snowing in like, I think the end of October,
Yeah.
and we had a really bad winter that year. So I had never seen that much snow or temperatures that low. Like there were times where it was like negative like 13 or something. And you get warnings, don't be outside for like more than 10 minutes with your exposed skin. So it's crazy. I was like, it's
Wild.
yeah, I've never experienced that, and I've adjusted a little better. But I think for me, it was a bit of a more um, me just really like being able to dig in with no outside influence, like being at home, and people you're used to. It was kind of a way for me to really find myself again, I think. And I really think it helped me like creatively, is just being able to try things and kind of be in my own little bubble. And starting out here with like new friends and starting to build all over again was really nice, because we made some really good friends and stuff. But I think it really helped me kind of find myself again and still in that process. So yeah, I think it did affect me both ways. And also, I don't know, there's something about like the summers here. It's so green and so beautiful, and like uh so many lakes. So it's interesting, because in the desert we do desert things, and here the people go to lakes and they,
Totally.
it's just, yeah, it's just completely different. Um, and also, like at night, it's just so different because it's dark and there's so many trees around. And in the desert, you can still see the sky. Um, it's so yeah, it has affected me, but I think in a positive way. And I do appreciate like the journey.
Moments of nature and the journey. And, it's one of those things where, you know, I mean, again, when you're from the South and it's hot, deserty, and then all of a sudden it's like, you're up north now and it's snowy and everybody's got a weird accent too, and it's because even the Minnesota accent, you're like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah. And,
yeah, with bags.
yeah, hey,
I'm still used to that one.
yeah,
I know
yeah.
it's gonna slip out one day. Yeah.
Oh my God, that would be hilarious. You're talking like, yeah.
Yeah. And then, I say stuff and then, you just realize how regionally some things are like, um, and so it's just funny. It's just funny. Like, but I do appreciate it. They're really nice people.
Of course, of course. What do you want people who listen to your music? What do you want them to take away from it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think just being an artist, even though I say a song means something, I think for them just to experience it fresh and whatever it means to them, let it mean that to them. Because I do like when artists tell me what a song's about because it gives you depth into it, but sometimes for an artist, the song is something different. Like um with Placebo, I remember there's that song, what is it called? My Sweet Prince.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I used to have, and I looked for it like at least once a month online because I lent it to somebody and never got it back. But it was an acoustic set, and I think something happened with like their instruments, so they had to use like a piano that was in house. They pulled up a trumpet, just put together this acoustic set last minute, and he was talking about that song, My Sweet Prince. He's like, yeah, I bet you a lot of lovers are thinking about this song right now, but if only you knew what it was about. So it's interesting that, like, what the song's really about to somebody and what it's, what everybody else takes it as.
That's a mystery.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and like being an artist, going to art school, you really, it's kind of the same thing. You put something out and then you let people
Let
kind of
them,
judge. I was thinking of like Andy Warhol, put out art, let them judge, but keep putting out more art.
of course. Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
that's kind of how I feel about it. And I think just, let be you, let people be themselves. Obviously don't harm anybody. But just like express yourself and create, even if nobody likes it, just create to create and go from there. Um, don't let the social media, because it is different. I feel bad for, I know I can handle a lot of the criticism that, you know, and it wasn't just because of like art school and stuff, we had to go through it, but the way like myself and some peers
Mhm.
um, handle it or just criticism in general, we're all built differently. So I know for me, I can take it and, people, the amount of comments I get about, oh, this song sucks, whatever, but I'm like, whatever, man, like it doesn't matter to me.
Not for you. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so I think with people, don't let that stuff affect you so much and just put out your art and keep growing. Just
Yeah,
keep going from there.
yeah, absolutely. How do you see the Dead Electrics in the next 5 years? What do you hope to see as well?
Yeah, so that's a good question. What I've been, I guess, thinking and planning and trying to make happen is I do want to put out a full length and start playing around more and maybe even like small tours and hopefully like some festivals. That's kind of the goal. And I think a big goal for me would have my music in like some horror movies. I think that'd be amazing.
Would you
Like
music and stuff like that? Have you looked into doing like score music?
I haven't.
Mhm.
I'm kind of letting the universe flow me in that direction.
Absolutely.
Um And but yeah, I think that that's the goal right now. And I think to be able to build something that I can not, every artist wants to, at least for the most part, generate some kind of revenue from their art and just be able to, live off it. I think that would be amazing. But I think for me is just being able to create full time, um, and yeah, just kind of see where it takes me. I just want to push as hard as I can and go from there. Um, as I'm growing, find people that can help me. And right now my friend JJ Caballero, he's one of my best friends. He helps me out so much. We bounce ideas back and forth from each other. I'll design stuff for him. He'll mix my music, and um, I feel like he, as a producer and like as a friend, understands me a lot more because I would work with other people. Not to say they didn't get it, but I feel like their input, it was good, but it wasn't on the same wavelength. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like the same wavelength, and like intuitively, they didn't know what I was trying to do, and I feel like intuitively he does know.
Yeah, yeah.
So, um, yeah, just trying to keep going and see, I guess, see how far I can take it and kind of go from there. And yeah, just build these communities around it. That'd be fun.
Awesome, cool. I always end my podcast with one last question. Thank you so much for your time. I
Oh,
really
thank you.
appreciate it, dude. It's been awesome to finally have you on. I've been super excited. Love your music.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I always have the artists. I was in the podcast with one last thing. Anybody who's listening to this, watching this, whether they're a fan of your music or they just come to the podcast for having a bad day or just want to forget whatever is going on in their
Yeah.
life temporarily, what words of advice do you have for them right now?
Oof. I think, without the rainy days, we don't have the sunny days. And, life has its ups and downs. I know I've experienced my share of really highs and really lows. But, no matter what, just be grateful you get to see another day. I think in my life, I've growing up, I had a lot of responsibility. When we moved back to El Paso, we lived with my grandparents. So I think, and I've kind of noticed with people who spend more time with their grandparents, we kind of, at least for the most part, a lot of us look at life a little differently because, you only see them at the end. You don't see them in the beginning, where your parents got to see them in the middle.
Yep.
So I think seeing someone in the end and getting advice from them really helps you put like just life into perspective. And, you know, they'll, a lot of times people open up and they'll tell you about like, things that they weren't proud of or what they wish they would have done. And so I think, just every day above 6 feet is a good day. You know,
Fine.
Above 6 feet's a good day. And, most things you can fix for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, most things you can fix. And just try to, keep your head up. Like most things aren't as bad as we think they are. They can be fixed. Um, and don't be afraid to reach out for help, whatever it is. Like, I've had friends with like substance abuse issues or just, go through different things. And I think when you are vulnerable, and it's hard, man. Like even like for myself, like in music, sometimes being vulnerable, it's a hard thing for people to do. But I think when you can like put our egos aside, it really helps us grow. And even just in the world in general, like even in business, when I try to, when I talk to customers and stuff, um, and there's a lot of like, well, what I want versus what you want. And I think if we can put our egos aside and, usually we all want the same things and you can meet in the middle. Um, so yeah, if you're going through a bad day, there's always going to be a good day. Um, but just keep your head up, listen to some music, get some sun, touch grass.
Jimmy, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you so much, dude. You've been awesome to have on my podcast, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me. And I know we had some reschedule, so I'm
Okay.
so grateful
Yeah, no problem.
for your
Anytime.
time too.
Very flexible with that kind of stuff. So yeah, thank you so much, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take it easy.